Moving on then, we're going to start working upwards, in the face, working up towards the eyes and brow. And the thing that we're going to take a look at on the way there is this whole frontal cheek area, the bit of cheek that's sitting over the, the ridge of the cheek bone. And we're going to start by looking at what's happening here with our little naslab and nose control, right? Because obviously we tied the nose in already. But, of course, the deform here actually isn't that great. We've got the geometry collapsing up here in the cheek space. But we've also got this sort of void, as it were, between the naslab and the nose there. These are just that little corner vertices that aren't really part of the, the naslab itself, but they're not really part of the nose wing either. We can look at the weight here, and of course we see that it's ending at that vertex. Perhaps what we need to do is to just, extend the weight out somewhat. So let's grab this edge here so we get both of those vertices. We've got the naslab weight, and let's just give them, let's say 50% weight, shall we? So we've got a little bit of extension there. Now when we come back here, okay, we see that's catching the void area. It is, however, also pulling on a bit of that nose wing that caught some weight. That's probably undesirable, so let's get that single point there and just clear it from the weight map like that. Okay, that's sort of taking care of that a little bit better, and so that's looking, more decent. What we have to look for, of course, is the fall off into that area. We might perhaps realise that it would probably have been better to put this more over there when we initially built it. Now we could do a little surgery, as it were, to correct that. It's perfectly correctable. You've just got to, move the base controllers, line up the bones again, and re-rest it back in. Perfectly fine, perfectly doable. And if we were getting too much, throw over in that area, then we might do that. But really we're not. So we're more or less, safe enough where we are with that. So let's work on this whole cheek area. Now the nasolabial fold, this, fold of flesh that comes around the mouth here, this is just where skin and fat are being compressed and causing this fold. If we go back to looking at the, good old muscles of the face, then you see we don't have a continuous ring of muscle coming round here. We have the, little levator labii, that's the lip lifter running down the side of the nose, but then you've got the angular depressor of around the mouth, and really that fold takes place as both of these muscles are pulling in concert. But you've also, of course, got here the superior lip raiser muscle that's running across this angle, and it's really as this one pulls in this direction, that one pulls in that direction, and this guy pulls along its round here, that the flesh and the fat just gets, bunched up. That's why you get this fold. It's not actually a muscle line itself, so to speak, or at least not a continuous muscle. As such, what we should really look to do is to try and get some of this, stretch direction in. And of course we can see that this is attaching right up here, just under the eye, and of course coming around the cheekbone here. And of course when you do pull into a sneer and your cheek fattens and bulges, the bulge runs right up to the underside of the eye. Now up here on this character, that's all the way up here. That's this little, edge that we've got here, right? It's that little fold that's coming off there. Now this is, a highly stylized character, so this gap is really big. It wouldn't be that big on a realistic face. It's just part of the stylization of this character. But knowing where that is important. And so with that knowledge, we can make ourselves here a cheek front weight map. So we're going to want to influence this whole area of the cheek frontage. You can see that, of course, it just extends up. It's softened at the edges, so we've got a nice low weight running along this edge here, which is, of course, the edge at the under eye position there. You notice that we're also softening it just as it comes into the fold here. And you can also see that we're bringing it right down into the nose corner. Perhaps at this little corner join point we might want an extra bit of weight right on that single point there, maybe not. But notice as well that we've actually got it running into the body of the nose here. So we've got it running as far as this edge, where it is of course softened off at a lower percentage. Why? Because of course, when that pulls up, the skin at the side of your nose also bunches and pulls, right? So by having the weight affect that will also give us the ability to have whatever we've got here compressing the cheek to also bunch the skin on the nose. We see, of course, that the way to do this is fairly simple and standard. It's nothing we haven't already seen. We've just got, a couple more stretchy bones set into those parts. So let's have a little look here. And there it is. We can see that actioning there. Now it's going a bit crazy on the under eye here when we're coming up that high. We're also getting this lump go over. If we have a look at why that lump is, well, it's the fact that there is weight on this vertex here, you see, but none on that vertex. So essentially what we're seeing is that lump forming up. So we can pop a little scotch of weight, I think, onto that vertex up there. Let's just try something low, like 20%. There we go, that's lifted that side there a bit. Okay, but I think it's still a bit too strong here, even though we would probably never pose it up this high. So let's get both of those there and reduce them down to 10%. Not a huge amount of difference because of course we don't have anything else really holding or affecting that. We will in time, but as of yet we currently don't. What do we have over here? How are you looking? That's looking quite reasonable, I think. We're getting a nice little lift in the cheek from that. And we're getting a bit of a flip when that goes across there. I should probably either have based my bone or at least pivot recorded it so as it started out at 0. See what it's like when we're raising the mouth there. That's behaving quite nicely up in that cheek area. It's also taking care of some of that collapse that we were getting earlier, remember? We see that we haven't really had much of a negative effect on this. That's still pretty good. The only other thing that we're seeing is what's happening here in this edge by the nose. So that we're getting this quite unpleasant pull deform taking place there, where it's just pulling away too much. So let's see what we can do about that, because most likely that's going to be weighting. So let's take a close-up look. Let's grab our polys in the nose corner area here so as we can have a good close look at them, because this really is where we're going to be seeing some of our problems coming from. So we've currently got the cheek front weight selected, right? Let's have a look at these edges here. You'll notice this is actually 2 edges, because there's an edge here that is part of this polygon, and there's also an edge there, which as you can see is part of that polygon. It's just where it's folded over as we make the wing of the nose overlap the flesh of the face there a little bit. Perhaps we'll try extending the cheek front onto that corner vertex just here, which of course we cleared from the NASLab before we gave a try to, but then got rid of. Just give that a little bit of weight. Aha, okay, there we go. That's making something of an improvement. We're still getting something of a shear here, so it's best to take a good look at our mesh at subpatch 0, as that will help us to diagnose what we need to grab or fix or what have you. So let's look around there. So when this pulls, there we go, and we see what it is. It's this backside here of the nose. See, this vertex down there is remaining behind whilst that one is going up. As a result, this is partly just the fault of difficult topology. You might, in some instances, find it just easier to do a little bit of, spinning of edges. Now, you see, if we move this forwards just out the way for a moment, this is where we can see the problem is coming from. It's the fact that we've got this big polygon scooting up the side there. And so when this point gets pulled, it is of course pulling geometry from down here under the nose wing. So what I'm going to try is a little spin edge operation. There you go, spin that edge there. Not the prettiest, but looking a bit better over here. Let's try it. That's the edge its original way round. Let's just try it that way round instead. Aha! This appears to be the ticket. There we go. Is it a little bit nasty down there? Yes, it probably is. But again, that's not something that we're going to have, you know, huge amounts of displacement on. We shouldn't really be pulling that all the way up here. You know, something around that should be quite sufficient. And if we did want to pull it up higher, for whatever reason, you know, stylized character, maybe we'll go for a high press there. Well, of course, maybe we just want to be putting more, you know, displacement on the nose wing. Yeah, so we could adjust our nose wing adjustment to account for such a high level of pull. So that's pretty good. Our actual main nose body is perhaps being a bit weird now because, of course, you know, we're going on to the flat, bony part of the nose there. If we again view this at subpatch 0, then, you know, we can see how somewhat unpleasantly that's pulling at the nose geo there. But that's a nice easy fix because all that we want is just to add in a nose hold. Let's pop this guy up here, give it a rest length in there, position, rest it. Let's give it 100% weight. In a minute it's got no weight map, so it's going to be grabbing everything. But there, now we see it gives a bit better fall off with those vertices going into the main nose body. Let's just give you a slightly different position. Pop you there. There we go. That's looking more pleasant. And of course, if we want to be sure that that's not going to mess us up anywhere else, then we can just grab these, you know, main nose polys here. Let's make them nose bone, shall we? That becomes nose bone. There we are. That's still behaving nicely. And let's just check our nose control. Badly affected. Not really. Perhaps we can lose nose bone just from these verts here, where of course we also have the main nose map. There we go. That's working quite well, I think. So there we have it. We've got our, you know, raising of that. And of course notice that when we do, because of where we've set our weight edge, we get the definition of that little line bulge under the eye there, which is also quite attractive. One last adjustment we'll make then, which really is also part of the whole movement of the, you know, jaw and mouth and the lower section of the face, is the ears. Because you'll notice that when you really sort of crunch your jaw together, or especially when you smile, you will find that your ears, it's, you know, differing amounts in different folk, but your ears produce a teeny weeny little lift, a tiny little nudge. So we're just going to build that in since it's part of this whole section of the face, or rather it's a response to this whole section of the face. And we'll once again do it with nodes. You can notice that I haven't put a base to these ear bones. You can to keep them at 0, or again you can just, you know, make sure you put in the appropriate numbers, which is what I'll do here once I get up my nodal motion. So I'm first of all going to get an item info, and for this guy I'm going to reference the jaw controller. Going to get the old vector scalar here and take from the jaw's position. Which position? I'm going to take it from the Y. So we're going to use that little crunch movement here. What I'm going to do is say that between 0 and, 4 millimeters, let's say, shall we? So let's get a gradient, plug in the input. The keys are going to be 0 to 4 millimeters. So the position, 4 millimeters there. 0.004. Let's just set the range of our thing here to 0.01. There we get a better view of our keys. And what's the output for that going to be? Well, we're going to raise it up on Y. It's going to be a tiny amount. Let's first of all get the base there. That's 0.8379. And how much are we going to move it up to? Only a tiniest scotch, just like that. And so this guy then becomes 0.9531. Let's get our make vector. Ensure that we input the correct X and Z values here to that. Plug that alpha into our Y. Plug that to the position. And there we go. Got a little displacement of the ear there when we move the jaw. Notice not when we rotate it, just when we laterally move it. Then the other place that we're going to do it is with the smile here. So let's get another item info. This is going to be looking at the lip mid left. Of course, it's based, so it's coming from 0. Let's get a vector scalar for it. We're only going to be interested in the Y channel. Take a gradient again, plug that in. I'm going to say that it's going to be at most, let's say up here, shall we? That's what, let's call that 160 mil. So our base key in this case is 0. That's going to be 160 mil. So 0.16. Obviously, I need to lengthen that. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to add these together. So this first key that had just the base position of the ear bone there is just going to go to 0 because we're going to want to add 0 to it. And then let's think just how much do we want to raise the ear. So let's just find that out. And again, I think it's only going to be a tiny amount. So we're going to go from 8.3 to 9.5 again. Let's just say the same amount, shall we? So that's a total of 1.2 millimeters. So let's just set our second key output value to 0.12 millimeters. Let's get a scalar add. We'll take the two alpha outputs, add them together, plug them in there, and vector to position. So now we get the adjustment coming from here, and we get an additional adjustment